Chapter 1692, Return Customer. Back in the brilliant emporium, Sonny was standing motionlessly in the middle of the dining hall. His face was frozen. The streets of Bastion had long turned dark, and he was enveloped by a peaceful silence. Some time later, he looked down and stared at the gloomy shadow. I did not imagine the whole thing, did I? The shadow stared at him back and shrugged. Nevertheless, it seemed strangely elated. Maybe. No, Nephis had definitely been here just now. Her plate was still on the table, and her glass was still mostly full of water. Not only had she been here, but Sonny was now apparently making a soul-bound sword for her. Slowly, his face paled. What did I do? It all seemed perfectly reasonable and cunning in the moment. Not only would he be able to fulfill his ambition of replicating the bound, enchantment with Neph's help, but she would also reveal the secrets of her transcendent battle art to him, completely of her own volition. Not to mention the hefty sum he would earn for the commission. But now, Sonny was panicking. Why did he insist on spending lots of time with her? That was the exact opposite of what the humble shopkeeper was supposed to do. His only task was to stay as far away from Nephis as possible and live a tranquil, peaceful life. And now, in the span of just a few days, Sonny ended up being entangled with Nephis and Cassie both. Somehow. This wasn't a part of the plan. But it was also not that bad. Despite how contrary to his plans the current situation was, Sonny found himself smiling. In fact, despite his panic, he was just as elated as the gloomy shadow. Too much so, even, to the point that his second avatar was currently humming a happy melody in Ravenheart, which made Rain stare at him weirdly. Sonny abruptly stopped humming. Crap. He had did it now. The next day, Sonny informed somewhat sleepy Eiko that Changing Star had visited the shop late in the evening to commission a memory. The petite girl just stared at him for a moment and then asked, her voice gruff. Oh yeah, who else came in? Was it Santa Claus? Hearing the unfamiliar name, Sonny frowned. Saint Claus, who is that? Is there a new transcendent in the sword domain? Eiko just shook her head and looked away. Never mind. So you're telling me that both Cassie and Changing Star herself have visited the brilliant emporium, but both waited until I was gone to spend some time with you alone. Am I getting this correctly? Sonny blinked a couple of times. I mean, that is a strange way of putting it, but yes, that is basically it. She nodded. Sure, why not? I shouldn't be surprised, really. By that point, Sonny was starting to get offended. What's the matter? I thought you would be happy. We'll get a pile of soul shards soon. Eiko yawned. Yeah, that's great. Don't forget to give me a fat bonus then. Her tone told him to leave her alone, but Sonny was not willing to. It's true, she even complimented my cake. The petite girl silently floated up to the ceiling. He stared at her in confusion. What are you doing? Eiko responded sarcastically. Checking the liquor. I just made an inventory yesterday, so don't think I'll fail to find out how much you guzzled after I left. Sonny threw his arms up. Is this how you talk to your boss? She scoffed. I apologize. Don't think I'll fail to find out how much you guzzled after I left, boss. Shaking his head, he mumbled a few curses and went about getting ready for the morning customers. A few days passed in idle tranquility. There was not much happening in the brilliant emporium, so Sonny simply waited to be contacted by the fire keepers. Funnily enough, the Lord of Shadows was in the same situation. The elders of Clan Valor were taking their sweet time discussing how to negotiate with him, so he had nothing better to do than wait. Only the avatar in Ravenheart was busy, since he and Rain were in the initial stages of planning a hunt for the awakened abomination. A few more days passed, and then Sonny was distracted by the sound of plates rolling in the dining hall. Looking up from the stove, he wiped his hands and went to check what had happened. When he left the kitchen, what met him was the sight of Eiko having planted face first into the floor. There was a new customer standing at the entrance, sunlight pouring over her shoulders and illuminating her slender figure. The customers were staring at her in silent awe. Nephi's, meanwhile, looked down with a hint of bewilderment in her eyes. "Eiko, are you all right?" She was wearing civilian clothes once again, this time having replaced the criminal summer dress with fashionable white trousers and a fitted black blouse. The petite girl mumbled a stifled curse and slowly picked herself off the floor. Yes, I'm perfectly fine, Lady Nephi's. What brings you here?" Sunny had the same question. He had expected for Cassie to summon him telepathically, or maybe one of the fire keepers arrived to hand him an invitation. The fact that Nephi's arrived personally was rather strange. Did she have a lot of free time? As a matter of fact, she probably did, waiting for the elders of Clan Valor to make a decision. The same way the Lord of Shadows was waiting, but that still did not explain why she had come to the brilliant Emporium. Secretly stumped, Sunny walked over and made sure that Nephi's could not see, and gave Eiko a smug look. Then, he turned away with a pleasant expression. Welcome. I didn't expect you to visit our establishment again so soon, my lady." Nephi's remained silent for a few moments, then said neutrally, "I'm here to continue the discussion we started last time. Oh, and..." Her expression remained stoic. "I'm a bit parched. Would you mind serving me some tea? And something to go along with it, cake will do fine." Sunny's smile wavered for a moment. He sighed. "I'm afraid we don't have cake at the moment, but..." His chin rose a little. "I've been told that my waffles are to die for. Please have a seat. I'll be with you shortly." Very soon, Sunny personally delivered a portion of his nearly immaculate waffles to Nephi's, complete with a scoop of vanilla ice cream and some freshly cut strawberries. "I think I've outdone myself this time, if I do say so myself." He was in a great mood. Sunny wasn't sure what had come over him, but he was especially inspired today while making the waffles. It almost felt like he was on the verge of breaking through the bottleneck of his culinary skill. Perhaps the missing ingredient was not the waffles themselves, but the customer for whom he was making them. Contemplating these profound issues, he sat across from Nephi's and smiled. She wasn't wearing that clumsy disguise of hers today, so he could enjoy the sight of her lustrous silver locks. The few customers present in the dining hall were frozen in stunned awe, the name-changing star ready to fall from their lips. Sunlight seemed especially radiant in her presence, bathing the brilliant Emporium in a warm glow. Sunny felt his heartbeat quickening. Nephi's spared him a short glance, then looked away to take a sip of tea. Finally, she picked up the fork and took a small bite of the waffle with an aloof expression. "She won't even look at me. Well, makes sense. Why would she?" Unlike Sunny, who couldn't help stealing glances at Nephi's, she was probably preoccupied with different thoughts. He sighed. "I can't help but notice that you are not hiding your identity anymore, Lady Nephi's. I was under the assumption that you wanted to keep the commission secret, though. What changed?" She put the fork down, gave the waffles a strange stare, and then finally faced him. "I still do. However, plans had to change due to our last conversation. Considering that we will have to spend a lot of time together, trying to hide our connection from Valor is not an option. They'll discover a new person in my immediate circle sooner than later. So, we will have to resort to a bit of misdirection instead." A subtle smile touched her lips. "Congratulations, Master Sunless. You are now the official memory purveyor of the Fire Keepers. An independent specialist we've hired to handle sales and acquisitions of sorceress equipment. Of course, you will receive a generous commission for every deal you facilitate, which will pay for the actual commission." As Sunny froze, unable to speak, she studied his face for a few moments and then returned to the waffles with a small, but seemingly pleased smile. "Goddamn, we've struck it rich, Eiko." Signing an official contract with the Fire Keepers was not much different from receiving a government tender. The memory boutique side of the brilliant Emporium was about to explode in revenue, all of that simply to bury the exchange of soul shards for the actual work Sunny was being hired to do. Very crafty. It was Cassie who had come up with that scheme, without a doubt. However, Something still did not make sense. He frowned slightly. That is great news, and I am definitely delighted to hear it. But my lady, even so, isn't it a little bit too strange for you to deliver the news personally? Surely, sending one of your subordinates would have been much more in line with such an arrangement. Nephis was an exalted existence even among saints. She would have never had to deal with something as mundane as hearing a procurement specialist personally. So, there was an obvious contradiction between her intention to create a cover for him and her actions, which only served to blow it. She remained silent for a while, savoring her tea and dessert, or pretending to savor them, most likely. It was hard to tell from her expression if she was really enjoying the taste of what Sunny had cooked, which, honestly speaking, was a little heartbreaking. But that was how Nephis was. She had never really had a sweet tooth. Still, her acting skills must have improved tremendously in the past 4 years. Her pretense of being engrossed in his waffles was incredibly convincing. Sunny wasn't sure that he could have put on such a performance himself. Eventually, she put the fork down with a masterfully acted-out hint of reluctance. Oh, you are correct, but that would not have solved the problem. You and I are going to be seen together often, after all, and there needs to be an explanation. So I am here to sow the seeds of that explanation. The memory purveyor position is an intentionally flimsy misdirection. No one would really buy it, considering the circumstances. Nephis paused for a moment. So, there will be a deeper layer of deception hidden beneath it. Sunny smiled. A double misdirection. She smiled faintly in response and nodded. Once someone becomes suspicious of your official position and digs deeper, they'll discover the prepared explanation and come to a false conclusion, thinking that they've discovered the truth, not knowing that what they've discovered is actually another, more convincing lie. Definitely Cassie's idea. Sunny tilted his head a little. And that more convincing lie is. Nephis shifted a little. Well, I mean no offense, Master Sunless, but nothing about your background suggests that you are worthy of my attention. However, how do I say this? You must have looked in the mirror. What do you think people will assume when they see me keeping someone like that by my side? He blinked a couple of times, confused. Actually, I avoid mirrors. I'm sorry, Lady Nephis, but I don't quite understand what you mean. Strangely enough, Nephis seemed stumped. She remained silent for a while, then took a sip of tea. Then she cleared her throat. What I mean to say is that people will assume that I am infatuated with you, that I've arranged for you to have a position with the fire keepers because you are my paramour. So, I am here today to plant the seeds of that impression, Master Sunless. Of paramour. Sunny froze. He was suddenly happy that he had not brought himself a cup of tea, as well, because he would have definitely spat it all out at that moment. The implications of what Nephis had said slowly seeped into his mind. It wasn't that outrageous. On the contrary, it was an ingenious lie that would perfectly explain why the two of them were spending time together. People loved nothing more than salacious rumors, after all. But still, what she's trying to say is that my cover will be that I'm her boy toy. Sunny was mortified, but also intrigued, but also mortified. The mix of emotions must have been apparent on his face, because Nephis suddenly picked up her cup, looked away, and said evenly, "It is just for the sake of deception, of course. I'll understand if you're uncomfortable with this arrangement." Sunny slowly shook his head and forced out a pale smile. I'm not uncomfortable." She looked at him with a hint of concern. "Are you sure? Come to think of it, I didn't even ask if you have a partner. I wouldn't want for your girlfriend to misunderstand." Sunny's smile grew brittle. "I am sure, and there's no one like that. This arrangement works for me. I think it's a splendid idea, very deceptive." Internally, though, he was imploding. "Saint Cassia, care to explain yourself?" Cassie did not answer. Perhaps she wasn't in the mood to waste essence to hijack his senses, or perhaps she simply did not want to. In any case, after that bombshell of a revelation, Sunny sat quietly and stared into the distance for a while. He was trying to understand how he had ended up in this situation. It was all his fault, of course, really. Sonny had no one but himself to blame. Had he not suggested creating a soul-bound memory for Nephi's on the spur of the moment, there would have been no need for them to interact, let alone do so while hiding the real reason from Clan Valor. The Lord of Shadows would have continued to play his role as her battle partner, while the humble shopkeeper would have continued living his mostly peaceful life in solitude. But now, I'm going to be a kept man. Gods, why am I so handsome? That pretty face of his was a curse. If Sonny had a more rugged appearance, Cassie would have had to come up with a different explanation for his presence near Nephi's. The Lord of Shadows, who always wore a ferocious mask, received nothing but respect. But when Sonny showed his face, the most people could believe was that he had caught the princess's fancy due to his pleasing looks. Surely, being a saint and ruling a citadel in a death zone had nothing to do with the difference in treatment. I can't believe it. Jet had once told Sonny that he could become a flower boy one day. Who knew that her words would not only come true, but also come back to bite him one day? He glanced at Nephi's furtively. She was finishing her waffles with a calm expression, seemingly not affected by the sensitive nature of their conversation at all. There was no hint of agitation or embarrassment on her beautiful face, and her posture remained graceful and poised, like always. Well, it made sense. It was nothing but a strategy of deception for her, after all. She did not know Sonny and only saw him as a valuable resource, a talented enchanter who could create a powerful memory for her to use. But it was different for Sonny, because, to him, she meant so much more. Throwing another glance at her, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. What happened happened. There's no point in worrying about it now. In fact, he should just accept the situation and allow himself to enjoy it. Sonny would have lied if he said that he didn't feel a little bit excited about the whole situation. After all, if Nephi's was calm, then why couldn't he be calm as well? He's looking at me. What do I do? Should he's looking at me again? Pretending to be nonchalant, Nephi's tried to concentrate on the stunningly delicious waffles that Master Sunless had made for her, and not show any sign of her distress. She didn't quite understand how she had allowed Cassie to convince her to go with this plan. When they discussed how to go about allowing the charming enchanter to stay close to her without alerting Clan Valor to the true purpose of the arrangement, the idea seemed quite reasonable. Strategically, it was sound. There was even the added benefit of shielding Nephi's from the pursuits of the prospective bachelors from other legacy clans, somewhat. It was only this morning that she had gotten cold feet. Knowing herself, Nephi's had rehearsed the conversation in her room, extensively, and finally realized how deeply embarrassing it would be to say something like that to the charming young man's face. Nevertheless, she had gone through with it. She was not someone to back down from a challenge, after all. But now, she had to face the consequences. He looked so put upon. Well, why wouldn't he? Despite his alluring looks, Master Sunless was an incredibly talented craftsman, first and foremost. He must have taken a lot of pride in his skill. To be reduced to such a role had to be extremely humiliating from his point of view. Yet, he graciously accepted their scheme without voicing any complaints. Being involved in all the lies and deceit surrounding the royal family of the Sword Domain could not have been easy for a decent and honest person like him, either. Nephi's was starting to understand better why such a talented sorcerer had chosen to stay away from the great clans. She felt a little guilty. When her plate became empty, she sighed with regret and looked at Master Sunless. I should protect him well. There was no choice now but to proceed with the plan now. If you are ready, we should go to the castle. The charming young man seemed a little startled. Go to the castle, right now. Having calmed down somewhat, Nephi's nodded. Yes, we need to sign the contract officially. Apart from that, the more people see us together, the better. Don't worry, though, there is no need for you to do anything extra or force yourself to act in any kind of way. As long as we are simply seen together, Those who need to get the wrong impression will convince themselves of the falsehood. So you won't need to compromise your dignity." She lingered for a moment, and then added in a serious tone, "You have my promise, Master Sunless." She meant it. He looked at her silently for a while, his expression unreadable. Eventually, the young man nodded. "All right, give me a minute to give instructions to Aiko, and we can go." He stood up and retreated into the kitchen of the small cafe, leaving Nephi's alone. She was using a memory to make it impossible for anyone to eavesdrop on their conversation, but people could still stare. So, she couldn't allow herself to show any sign of losing composure. Even though all Nephi's wanted to do was slump in her chair and bury her face in her hands. And maybe order another serving of those delicious waffles. "Cassie." Her friend's voice resounded in her head a moment later, composed and calming. "Yes." Nephi's lingered for a few moments. "Prepare the contract." There was a little pause, and then Cassie replied neutrally, "Already done." Nephi's was a little surprised. She hesitated for a bit, then asked mentally, "You already did it, but what if he refused?" Her friend chuckled. "Why would he refuse? There's an army of men out there who would kill for the opportunity to act as your romantic partner. Don't sell yourself short." Nephi's frowned. That was true. She was beautiful in her own right, young, wealthy, renowned, and had the backing of a prestigious family. So then, her frown deepened a little. Now, wait a second. So why did he look so put upon? Who does he think? Her thoughts, however, were interrupted by Cassie's pleasant voice. "Oh, I wanted to say something. The way you found out if he has a girlfriend. Well done, very slick." Nephi's blinked. "What?" Then her eyes widened a little. A moment later, Master Sunless appeared near her table. He seemed to have regained his composure. Sparing Nephi's a bright smile, the charming young man bowed slightly. "We can leave, Lady Nephi's. Are you all right?" She took a deep breath. "Yes, I am fine. Let's just go." Leaving an avatar behind to help Aiko in the kitchen, Sunny left the brilliant emporium with Nephi's. The avatar did not have the benefit of wearing the nebulous mantle, but his transcendent presence would be safely contained as long as he did not enter the dining hall. Since the entire interior of the brilliant emporium was situated in the dimensional storage of the marvelous mimic, anyone would find it hard to catch a glimpse of what was happening in the kitchen. The cafe would still close for the day as soon as the current customers left, though. When Sunny told Aiko about the contract with the fire keepers, she was beyond happy for a few moments. However, pretty soon, they discovered a problem. Although the real purpose of the memory purveyor position was to hide the commission of an enchanted sword for Nephi's, that cover still had to be maintained. Which meant that the brilliant emporium would really have to handle the sales of the memories earned by the fire keepers, as well as the acquisition of the memories they wished to purchase. The problem was that Sunny's reputation as a memory broker was all a smokescreen, and he did not really possess a network of connections to facilitate such deals. Luckily, Aiko still had some contacts from running the brilliant emporium alone in the past, so she had to come up with a business plan and accomplish a lot of relevant things with utmost haste. The petite girl seemed daunted by the sudden task, but he could almost see piles of coins reflecting in her eyes. In any case, that was what was happening to Aiko and the avatar in the brilliant emporium. Sunny himself, meanwhile, was accompanying Nephi's on a leisurely stroll across Bastion. He had to admit that they made for quite a pair. Nephi's looked elegant and sharp in her crisp civilian clothes, while his attire was refined and tasteful. Sunny noticed that the two of them collected a lot of stares. Some people even turned around to watch them go. Some of them recognized Nephi's, some of them didn't. He felt a little uncomfortable with all that attention, but knew that it was the very reason they were out in the open. The streets of Bastion were lively at that time of day. Nephi's looked around with curiosity, a faint smile playing on her lips. Eventually, she asked, "Have you lived in Bastion long, Master Sunless?" He shook his head. No, only for about a year. She raised an eyebrow. Where were you before? Sunny lingered for a few moments, then shrugged. After Antarctica, here and there, I spent some time exploring the wilderness after the nightmare. Sunny did not specify which nightmare he meant, letting Nephise make her own wrong conclusion. There was nothing strange with saying that he had wandered the dream realm for years before settling in Bastion. Either it would have been a deadly affair before, but after the dream gates were open, there was much more travel between various citadels. Both the sword domain and the song domain were swiftly turning into actual states, as opposed to loose alliances of isolated strongholds. There were all kinds of activities going on in the wilderness of the dream realm these days. Roads were being constructed, trade routes were being established, fortified relay stations were being constructed, and so on. As the infrastructure of the domains was being built at a staggering speed, there was a need for all kinds of people to head into the wilds. The vast expanse of the dream realm, the part of it conquered by humans, was not a place where only warriors could survive anymore. Of course, every team had to be guarded by awakened escorts, but there were geologists, map makers, builders, explorers, messengers, merchants, and numerous other specialists traveling across it now. Nephise most likely assumed that he was a part of a large merchant caravan in the past. She smiled. I've been here for about 3 years, I guess. But actually, with how often I am away, the actual number of days I've spent in Bastion won't even account for 3 months. So, in a sense, you've been living here longer than me. Her smile grew a little wistful. How does it feel to live in Bastion? On this side of the lake, I mean. Sunny thought about it for a few moments, then answered in a light tone. Well, it's sort of tranquil for me, at least. There's always something going on, and the city is boiling with activity, but unlike the cities of the waking world, it's less suffocating here, both literally and metaphorically. The air is clean, and the people are optimistic about their lives. Back on Earth, everyone spent their days pretending not to know that everything was falling apart. Here, everyone is working together to build something from the ground up instead. It's nice. He paused, then added somberly. Of course, it's not all bliss and sunshine. Most of the people on this side of the lake come from Antarctica, so they are scarred and traumatized. In the worst cases, people reach their breaking point and snap. Crime is not exactly rampant, but it does exist. Worse than that, with how many awakened there are now, the government and the legacy clans can't police them all effectively anymore. It is one thing if a mundane person suffers a mental breakdown or succumbs to greed, but if it is an awakened, well, you can imagine. Sunny looked at Nephise and smiled sheepishly. Sorry, I seem to have spoiled the mood. She stared at him for a moment, then hurriedly looked away. No, it's all right. It is exactly what I wanted to hear. People like me are tasked with protecting humanity, but strangely enough, we mostly exist in isolation from the actual people we are meant to protect. So it is good to learn such things, so that we don't snap. They reached the waterfront and followed along the shore of the lake, heading for the distant ferry. This section of the lakeshore was fashioned into a park, and there were a lot of people here, resting on the grass. Many young couples included. Sunny suddenly felt a little hot. He caught himself staring at Nephise, whose profile was contoured by the radiance of the sun, for a moment too long. Does it bother you, the isolation? She looked at him and wanted to answer, but at that moment, Sunny's eyes suddenly widened. His expression changed. What the hell, not again. That was because just then, a powerful tremor shook the nameless temple in the distant god-grave. He was momentarily distracted and slipped on a wrapper someone had carelessly dropped on the ground. This can't be happening, I'm a saint for the love of gods. Why was it that every time he saw Nephise, he ended up tripping over his feet? Sunny considered whether he wanted to perform a sudden somersault to regain his footing, but that would look even more ridiculous than falling. Using Shadow Step was out of the question, as well, since that ability was already known to belong to the Lord of Shadows. So he resigned himself and prepared to hit the ground. A moment later, though, Nephi's took a step forward and wrapped her arm around his waist, gallantly stopping his fall before his back could touch the cobblestones. Sonny suddenly found himself face to face with her, his entire weight effortlessly supported by her strength, staring into her calm gray eyes. Their bodies were almost pressed against each other. Looking at him calmly, Nephi's asked in an even tone, "Master Sunless, are you all right?" Sonny's heart fluttered. He stared at her silently, his face growing pale. He was not all right. What the hell is that? Am I in a romantic drama? If so, why the hell am I the one being caught? It's the man's job to catch the pretty female lead. Although romance was not his genre of choice, Sonny had consumed a lot of such stories during his years in the outskirts. Back then, he had always mocked the hapless female leads, who always seemed to trip, slip, and fall right into the arms of the cold and aloof male leads, of course. He had even suspected that there was something in the water wherever the characters lived, since their coordination seemed non-existent. Who knew that he would find himself in the same situation, one day? And in the wrong role, to boot. He cleared his throat. "I am fine now, thanks. You can let me go." It seemed that Nephi's only realized that she was still holding him at that moment. There were a lot of people staring at them with wide eyes. She remained silent for a few moments, then smoothly pulled him to his feet, unwrapped her arm from his waist, and touched her hair lightly. Her expression remained perfectly nonchalant. "I see, that is good." Sonny straightened the nebulous mantle, trying to chase away the memory of her warm touch from his mind. And failing. Turning away, he sighed, bent down and picked up the wrapper. Then, he walked to a nearby trash bin and tossed it inside. Returning to Nephi's, he smiled apologetically. What was he supposed to say now? "I dislike people who litter." What was that? She nodded, still looking away. "Yeah, let's hurry to the ferry now. I think we put on a good enough act already. Well done." Sonny blinked. "Yeah, a good act, right? I thought I'd improvise." The two of them continued on their way to the ferry, both keeping quiet. Sonny was too indignant and embarrassed to speak, while Nephi's probably didn't care to. There was something strange about her, though. Had her shoulders trembled a few times? No, it was probably just his imagination. Eventually, they reached the pier. There were 6 ferries carrying people and cargo across the lake to the castle, operating in pairs. The one Sonny and Nephi's approached was located on the eastern shore and was meant for passengers. There was another pair of ferries on the southern side of the lake, in the direction of the Dream Gate, mostly used for transporting cargo. The last pair was on the northern shore, usually used by the awakened warriors departing on expeditions. Every time Sonny returned to the waking world, he had to purchase a ticket, wait in line, and then spend some unpleasant time on the crowded passenger deck of the ferry. Most masters had access to much more comfortable accommodations, but they also had a higher status than him. Since Sonny did not serve any established power and preferred to remain low-key, the treatment he received was much less glamorous than what an ascended deserved. He didn't mind it too much. Today, however, his experience was entirely different. Not only did Nephi's not bother to buy tickets, which made sense, considering that the enchanted ferry technically belonged to her family, but they were even immediately guided to the luxurious VIP deck. There was no crowd here, in fact. There did not seem to be any other passengers on the smaller deck, at all, at least not yet. Instead of the crowded standing arrangement, there were soft sofas and tastefully engraved tables. There were even refreshments and beverages provided, served on a separate table. The deck was situated at the front of the ferry and raised, so nothing obstructed the beautiful view of the vast lake and the picturesque castle rising from the waters in the distance. A soft breeze blew across the lake, playing with Neff's radiant silver locks. Sonny enjoyed the view for a few moments, then looked away and inhaled slowly. They walked to the beautifully laced wooden railing and looked at the sunlit vista. There was some time left before the ferry would depart, So they had nothing to do but wait. Both were silent, but strangely enough, Sunny did not feel awkward at that moment. Instead, he felt at peace. After a while, Nephi's suddenly asked, "Master Sunless, you possess a high affinity to shadows, don't you?" He nodded slowly. "I do." She considered her next words carefully. "What can you tell me about shadows, and people whose aspects have to do with them?" Now, it was his turn to choose words. After thinking for a bit, Sunny shrugged. "I can tell you a lot, actually, but also not that much. I am ashamed to say that I don't understand my element well myself, which is a bit fitting if you think about it, considering that Shadow God was also the god of mysteries. Shadows are a unique concept. Someone considers them to be the opposite of light, but actually, shadows and light are just two sides of the same coin. One cannot exist without the other. It is true darkness that is their enemy." He paused for a moment, secretly studying her reaction, and then added, "Shadows are also intimately tied to souls. In fact, I am not even sure where the soul ends and the shadow begins. There are very few beings out there who can deal damage directly to one's shadow, but if a shadow is hurt, the soul is hurt as well. Granted, things without souls also have shadows, it's all very mysterious." She remained silent for a while, contemplating his words. Then she asked neutrally, "Do you know of any other awakened with shadow aspects?" Sunny hesitated. "Well, I only ever heard of one." That seemed to pique her interest. "Oh." Sunny nodded. "Yes, there was a man who went by the name Shadow Blade Kurt, a really vicious fellow. I heard that he used to handle some truly distasteful tasks for a legacy clan, back in NQSC. I'm not sure which clan, though." Nephi's raised an eyebrow. "Used to." He smiled somberly. "Yes, he was one of those awakened who couldn't handle their nightmares, overusing stimulants to stay away from the dream realm. He eventually lost control and was dealt with by the government. That was the last anyone had ever heard about Shadow Blade Kurt." She sighed with a hint disappointment. "That doesn't sound like the kind of person I would want to know about. Thank you, though." Sunny smiled. "No problem, I'll go get us something cool to drink." He walked back to the table with the refreshments and poured them 2 glasses of light wine. As he was about to head back, however, Sunny froze for a moment. What is this familiar feeling? Suddenly, he had a terrible premonition. Oh no. He walked hurriedly toward Nephi's, but before he could reach her, a new passenger arrived. She noticed Neff's slender figure, grinned, and walked past him with wide strides. "Princess." Effie hugged Neff around the shoulder with a bright smile. "When did you return to Bastion? No, wait, you're not leaving right away again, are you?" Neff eyes opened her mouth to answer, but Effie gave her no choice. "Great, listen." She leaned closer and whispered loudly. "You're still single, aren't you? Well, let me tell you, that won't do. A beauty like you should not just be worshipped by the masses, but also appreciated by a dashing man. The masses won't warm you on a cold and windy night, after all, well, unless you're into that kind of thing." Neff's eyes widened. "Effie." The huntress laughed. "I'm saying all this for a reason. How about? You let me set you up with someone? Princess, I found you a perfect match. He's a young master here in Bastion. Homeowner, runs a successful business. None of that tiresome legacy baggage, either. Oh, he's an amazing cook as well. Gods, I'm starting to salivate just from thinking. Oh, and to be clear, I don't mean thinking about the food." Neff trembled. "Effie, wait." But Effie just smiled mischievously. "What? You were the one who told me that you were researching passion. How are you going to learn passion without, getting a little taste of passion? In any case, I saved the best for last. That guy, he's so cute. Ah, if I wasn't a married woman of modest disposition, I would have gobbled him up myself. He's just, wow, speak about tasty things. And you can tell that he hides a great body under that apron as well." Nephi's grabbed her hand forcefully. "Effie, stop talking." Effie looked at her in confusion. Then her smile slowly froze. She remained silent for a few moments, and then said in a stifled tone, "Oh, he's standing right behind me, isn't he? He's standing right behind me, isn't he?" Nephi's slowly released Effie's hand, suddenly feeling weak. It was too late. Oh, gods. She briefly considered lighting the ferry on fire. That would resolve the situation, wouldn't it? Yes, she would not have to face Master Sunless, at least. That was an actionable strategy. But no, she couldn't. The ferry had cast off moments after Effie showed up, which meant that the passengers would have nowhere to escape and drown in case of a fire. It also meant that Nephi's, Effie, and Master Sunless were stuck on the VIP deck, just the three of them, with nowhere else to go. There was no escape. Nephi's barely suppressed a shudder. I can summon my wings and flee. But that would mean leaving the charming young man alone with Effie. She was unwilling. No, actually, she was vehemently against it, for some reason. So, Nephi's just stared at the boisterous huntress impassively and said in an even tone, "Yes, he is." Effie trembled. Nephi's wanted nothing more than to sigh and hide somewhere. She had just managed to regain her composure after the incident in the park. And now, oh no, why did I think about what happened in the park? To her distress, the image of the beautiful enchanter making timid excuses for his clumsiness resurfaced in her mind, and all her composure evaporated. The memory of embracing him tightly surfaced next. At that moment, Nephi's did something that she never thought she would do. Maintaining a nonchalant expression, she took a casual step left and hid behind Effie. With Effie's robust body hiding Nephi's from Master Sunless, she suddenly felt much better. Wow, did you just heartlessly abandon a friend? Cassie's voice made her flinch. Nephi's gritted her teeth. I did not, I just retreated to support her from the rear. Cassie answered with a dubious hum. Effie, meanwhile, remained motionless for a few moments, and then slowly turned around. Oh, Master Sunless, you were here. Her light-hearted tone sounded a little forced. Nephi's could not see the charming young man from behind the tall huntress, but she could hear his pleasant voice. He answered after a short delay, maintaining perfect decorum. Yes, it is a pleasure to see you, Saint Athena. With that, he took a step forward and appeared in view, carrying 2 glasses of wine. Luckily, Nephi's had settled down a little by that point and was able to meet his gaze calmly. Master Sunless smiled lightly, then handed her one of the glasses. Your wine, my lady. He hesitated for a moment, then offered the second glass to Effie. The huntress silently took the wine and gulped it down in one go. Ah, I see. Has the brilliant emporium been contracted to provide catering for the ferry now? Good job, good job. Valor has deep pockets. The charming young man remained silent for a bit, then shook his head subtly. No, we are not providing catering for the ferry. Effie seemed confused. Oh, then how come you are here on the VIP deck? Not that I'm complaining. In fact, it's nice to see a pretty face, a friendly face. I meant to say a friendly face. Nephi's observed their conversation without saying anything, secretly stunned. This was probably the first time she had seen Effie tongue-tied. Amazing. Master Sunless was far more formidable than she had thought. Of course, his advantage was not going to last long. Knowing the vivacious huntress, she was going to double down on her suggestive remarks soon. And if that did not work, well, quadruple down then. It was all but impossible to fluster Effie. Anyone she aimed her sights on was doomed to be flustered instead. Granted, Nephi's wouldn't mind seeing the charming enchanter flustered. What am I even thinking about? Feeling a little guilty for hanging Effie out to dry. Even though the huntress had no one but herself to blame, Nephi's decided to clear the air and explain the situation. She would share the news about the memory purveyor position first, and then let Cassie explain the more scandalous layer of deception to Effie in private. After all, if the huntress heard it right now, she would not be able to help herself and tease the poor young man relentlessly. Yes, Nephi's had to protect him from her vulgar friend. Him, definitely not herself. She opened her mouth, intending to say something. But Master Sunless beat her to it. Walking over, he leaned on the railing beside her and gently took her hand. Nephi's froze. Well, how do I say this? I am on the VIP deck, because Lady Nephi's invited me to be with her on the VIP deck. Her eyes widened slightly. Neph's hand was suddenly burning from his soft touch. Do not spit your wine, Nephi's. She gulped the wine down and smiled weakly. Oh, right. No, but how is his hand so soft? Nephi's used to have rough, calloused hands, the hands of a swordsman. Later, as her body was fortified and tempered by the awakening, ascension, and transcendence, it rid itself of imperfections. Those calluses were long gone, and her skin was flawless. And yet, it was nowhere near the smooth silkiness of the beautiful enchanter's hand. Nephi's was unyielding and lived a life that was harsh and full of hardships. So, she wasn't used to soft things. I'm spacing out. Luckily, so was Effie. She stared at the charming young man with her mouth agape, then slowly turned to Nephi's. Then, she looked back at Master Sunless. And then back at Nephi's. Nephi's suddenly had a terrible premonition. Oh no. Gradually, a wolfish grin appeared on Effie's face. Oh no. She giggled. Oh damn, I see. Wow, Cassie sure works fast. The boisterous huntress leaned closer and whispered in an intimate tone. All right, I've already given this one the talk about the birds and the bees. Master Sunless, who was looking at Nephi's with a prideful expression, as if asking her to praise his act, suddenly tensed. Effie, meanwhile, patted him on the shoulder. So kids, let Auntie Effie tell you about safety now. Maintaining a calm expression, Nephi's turned and looked across the lake. The castle was so terribly far away. I've made a terrible mistake. In hindsight, Sonny should have known that he was digging his own grave. It was just that he did not see Effie often these days, and so he had forgotten. That Effie's corrupting influence was just as terrible as the corruption of the void itself. No, was it even more terrible? In any case, the opportunities to stump the boisterous huntress were too rare. He simply could not pass on the chance to fluster her. More importantly, while Sonny knew that Nephi's and Effie were close, Master Sunless had no way of knowing that. So, based on what he was supposed to know, the correct course of action had to be furthering the agreed-upon deception. Therefore, Sonny passed the wine to Nephi's, and then took her hand. Why did he do that? Well, simply put, because he could. If there was an opportunity to hold Neff's hand, why would he not? Effie had accidentally provided him with a convenient reason as well. It was all working out great. Sonny had promised himself to enjoy the odd situation, and he was going to enjoy it as much as he could. Neff's hand felt soft and cool in his grasp. He remained comparatively calm. That was not the first time the two of them held hands, after all, so there was no reason for him to lose composure. Sonny enjoyed the feeling silently, a small smile finding its way onto his face. Of course, it was only a familiar situation from his point of view. For Nephi's, suddenly holding hands with a stranger must have been surprising. Her expression did not really change, but he could feel a subtle tension in her shoulders. It seemed that she was a bit uncomfortable with his bold action, maybe even dismayed by it. Ah, did I mess up? It was then that Effie's rattled expression slowly turned into a mischievous grin, and Sonny's eyes widened slightly. He had realized his mistake. But by then, it was already too late. Oh, gods. Soon, he found himself sitting on a sofa side by side with Nephi's, listening to Effie explain contraception to them, in gruesome detail. What the hell? Weren't you the one who got pregnant in the middle of a disastrous military campaign? Why are you, of all people, telling me this stuff? On the other hand, perhaps Effie was the best person to teach people about safety, considering that she knew the consequences of carelessness better than most. Not that Sonny needed any teaching. Although, truth be told, his knowledge on the topic was mostly limited to the precautions meant for mundane people, awakened at most. At higher ranks of power, things progressively became much more complicated. Nephi's remained silent and nonchalant, but he found himself listening with interest. There was business to be made there, as well. That was definitely the reason why he was paying attention. Wait, why I'm acting this way. He frowned slightly. Truth be told, while his actions earlier were very much in line with his personality, Sonny felt strangely extra at the moment. After thinking for a while, he took a deep breath. He was being affected by Effie's presence. No, actually, his mood had been a bit strange ever since he met Nephi's in the nameless temple. Was there such an element to her presence as well? If so, there were two different sources influencing him, mixing and fusing in a chaotic manner. The influence was in no way strong, and he could easily suppress it if he wanted to. But it did seem to release his natural inhibitions, a little. What a mess. Spending time in the company of powerful saints was a strange affair. Getting himself under control, Sonny decided that he had enough of Effie's teasing. He smiled politely at her, waited for her to pause, and then asked leisurely. Oh, by the way, Saint Athena, I couldn't help but overhear. Did you mention wanting to gobble up something tasty earlier? Was it something we serve in the brilliant emporium? Effie, who was taking a sip of wine, suddenly spat it out. Sonny elegantly raised an arm, shielding Neff's white trousers from the rain of wine droplets with the folds of the nebulous mantle. I'm sorry, did I say something wrong? Effie coughed a few times and shook her head. No, it's all right. And thank you, but no, I have a husband. Now you remember. He smiled. How is Ling's dad doing, by the way? Sonny did not have a lot of friends in Bastion, and apart from Aiko, that nameless guy was the closest thing he had to a buddy. They often shared stories about managing the Beast Farm and the Brilliant Emporium, exchanging ideas and the like. However, Ling's dad seemed to be busy lately, so they had not had time to catch up in a while. Nephi's was looking at them with a hint of curiosity and a hint of relief. She had seemed utterly unaffected by Effie's graphic tirade before, but maybe Sonny was simply underestimating her poker face. She raised an eyebrow and asked, You know each other? Sonny nodded. Yes. Effie wiped her chin and smiled. Yes. We've had a surplus of produce at the farm for some time now, and the Brilliant Emporium is our main buyer. I haven't had the pleasure of dining there often, though. Still, Master Sunless is an incredible chef. Oh, and he also helped us a lot by enchanting a few items for the farm. She hesitated for a moment, and then gave Nephi's a bright smile and a thumbs up. Princess, I approve. Handsome, cooks well, and is great with his hands. The last part was said with emphasis, and accompanied by a wink. Nephi's tilted her head in confusion. Well, yes, that is why I approached him. Effie choked on her wine again. Sonny, meanwhile, closed his eyes for a moment. He knew that Nephi's failed to understand the double meaning in Effie's words and was referring to his skill as an enchanter. However, did she forget that they had not shared the details about the sword commission with the huntress yet? He let go of her hand, afraid that his palms would become sweaty. A memory commission, that is what she meant. Nephi's looked at him strangely. Of course, what else would I have meant? Effie waved a hand in the air. Sure, I believe you. Followed by another wink. Damnation. Effie laughed, then put down her wine and looked at them, her eyes glistening with curiosity. Was that how the two of you first met? Nephi's nodded. Yes. But Sonny, compelled by his flaw, answered at the same time. No. Both Nephi's and Effie looked at him with surprise. Sonny forced out a smile. Crap. Nephi's and Effie were staring at him in surprise. Maintaining a smile, Sonny cursed inwardly. Over the years, he had gotten used to his flaw, and it rarely landed him in real trouble these days. That was why he had relaxed a little, allowing himself more leeway while holding conversations. There was also the fact that the true reason why the flaw was so dangerous, his true name, was gone now. But there were still things he should not say. Crap. Sonny remained silent for a moment, then said calmly, Lady Nephi's might not remember, but we actually met before. It would have been extremely inconvenient if she asked when or where, so before either Nephi's or Effie could, he added of his own accord. We briefly met in Antarctica, near the end of the campaign. Both statements were true, and since he had volunteered them without being prompted, there was no question that would have demanded a more precise explanation. Of course, the statements were also not connected to each other, and although each of them was factual together, they created a false impression. That Sonny had met Nephi's for the first time in Antarctica. She raised an eyebrow. Really, I think I would have remembered someone so. She paused without finishing the sentence, remained silent for a moment, then added evenly. Remembered someone, so to speak. Huh. Her wording was a bit odd. Sonny pretended to be embarrassed. Oh, it was on the day the Sword King defended the SQSC. It might not have been very memorable for Lady Nephi's, considering everything else that was going on. Well, I was also covered in dirt from head to toe, so anyone would have had trouble recognizing me. She stared at him for a few moments, and then asked suddenly, Was meeting me very memorable for you? Sonny froze momentarily. What kind of question is that? That meeting of theirs? Yes, it was quite memorable. In fact, it was seared into his memory like a brand, still festering even after all these years. That was the moment he had learned about his existence being erased from the hearts of everyone who knew him, after all. Their actual first meeting was fresh in his memory, as well. Back then, on the bridge in front of the academy. He had been attracted by how aloof and detached from the world young Nephi's looked, standing there calmly with her headphones on. He had also felt a subtle sense of kinship with her, because she had been the only other sleeper wearing the standard-issue police tracksuit, just like him. Sonny smiled. For me, it was unforgettable. Nephi's kept her gaze on him for a brief moment, then looked away. Then, a corner of her mouth curled upward slightly. A second later, though, they were interrupted by Effie's excited squeal. I can't. The two of you are too cute. She laughed, then poured herself more wine and viciously attacked the plate of refreshments. As she was chewing, her gaze landed on the floorboards of the deck. Effie lingered for a bit, then asked curiously, By the way, Master Sunless, it seems that you don't have a shadow today. He followed her gaze, noticing that Neff's shadow was all alone, painted in black across the floorboards. Gloomy was currently serving as an avatar, after all, channeling Sonny's consciousness to help Aiko. Sonny shrugged nonchalantly. Oh, I seem to have misplaced it. It was not a big problem to be seen without a shadow while he was strolling with Nephi's or here on the ferry, but once they reached the castle, he would prefer to keep the strange nature of his shadow a better guarded secret. What to do? Sonny hesitated for a moment, then used shadow control to call over one of the wild shadows populating the ferry. After it glided across the deck and glued itself to his feet, in reverent awe at the prospect of pretending to be the Lord's own shadow, he shaped it to resemble the contours of his body and nodded. Is this better? Effie blinked a couple of times. Nice trick, right, so you were in Antarctica as well. I don't think I ever had a chance to ask. Were you one of us army grunts? Sonny sighed. I guess. It was nothing spectacular, though. Certainly not anything worth bragging about. I had a cushy assignment at Army Command before ending up in a nightmare. By the time I returned, there was nothing left to do but get on a boat and escape. Sonny did not mention that he had been a member of the 1st Irregular Company and the Special Reconnaissance Unit before landing a position as a special government envoy to Clan Valor, technically assigned to Army Command. He wanted everyone to believe that he had been a mere paper pusher in the vast military machine. That suited his harmless persona much better than being known as a decorated officer who had fought on most of the deadliest battlefields of the Southern campaign. Effie shook her head gently. Frontline, Army command, it's all the same. Everyone did their part. Anyone who survived that hell deserves my respect. Then she grinned. We are comrades, so how about a military discount next time I come to eat at the Brilliant Emporium? One soldier to another. Wait, actually, how about a family discount? Princess and I, we are practically sisters. Right, Neff? She looked at Nephise expectantly. Nephise remained silent for a moment, and then said in an exceedingly even tone, I don't know her. Effie stared at her with a betrayed expression. Then she whispered loudly, Come on, Neff. Help a sister out. Marry this guy fast so that I could save some money. Neff's eye twitched a little. The ferry floated across the lake, slowly approaching the castle. The conversation flowed naturally, with Effie easing up on teasing them, a little after getting her fill. Sonny was not supposed to know much about the inner workings of Bastion, so he mostly kept silent, letting the two women catch up after not seeing each other for a while. Effie was leaning back, looking at the water with a wistful expression. Anyway, I don't have much time to waste. As soon as we reach the castle, I'll be rounding up people and bringing them back to NQSC. There's trouble in the Western Quadrant again. I'm afraid that I'll be gone for a while this time. Nephise frowned, a hint of concern written on her face. How bad is it? Effie chuckled. Bad enough that they're sending Jet as well. That should tell you everything you need to know. Oh, I'm sorry, Master Sunless. Beast Farm is going to be gone from Bastion for a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. You'll need to find a new supplier. He shook his head. That is okay, don't worry about it. He had other means of getting ingredients, albeit not as fresh and delicious as what Effie's husband grew. The Brilliant Emporium would have to cut down on food services, too, with him being busy following Neff around and crafting a memory. Effie smiled, then looked at Nephise. What about you? Where are you off to next? I don't believe that those Valor Bast. She glanced at Sonny, then corrected herself. That those wise Valor elders will let you rest for long. Nephise lingered for a moment, then answered in a calm tone. Back to Godgrave, I suppose. The huntress suddenly seemed excited. Oh, right, you must have met him. That mysterious saint, the Lord of Shadows, what is he like? Sonny was suddenly all ears. Gossiping about me, huh? How exciting. Pretending to be oblivious, Sonny looked at Nephise and Effie with a little bit of masterfully performed confusion. Nephise spared him a short glance, then shrugged. The Lord of Shadows, he is just as the rumors say. Immensely strong, more than a little bit sinister, and highly eccentric. Effie chuckled. Well, anyone who chooses to live in a death zone has to be a lunatic. Still, to be called immensely strong by you, Princess, I am at a loss for words. Is there really such a monster in the world? Sonny blinked. Hey. What did she mean, highly eccentric? He was the picture of perfect mental health. Wells, maybe not. Still, Sonny was a little hurt. Nephise, meanwhile, smiled faintly. At the same time, he is nothing like what the rumors say. He is surprisingly considerate despite his tyrannical strength, kind despite wanting to appear sinister, and very shrewd despite his eccentricity. Effie blinked, then briefly glanced at Sonny with a strange expression. Princess, well, why are you smiling that way? In front of your, actually, never mind. Nephise raised an eyebrow. Oh, was I smiling? I didn't mean to. Sonny took a sip of wine. No, smile more. Why was Effie raining on his parade? What an insufferable woman. The insufferable woman in question, meanwhile, grinned. That's fine and all, but what does he look like? Is he handsome? I bet that even if he is, he can't be as handsome as Master Sunless. Sonny raised an eyebrow. Nephise shrugged again, seemingly uninterested in that topic. I don't know. The Lord of Shadows never shows his face. He is always either wearing a mask or a closed helmet. In fact, you can't even tell if there is a human body inside that armor, most of the time. Effie seemed excited, for some reason. Really? Damn, what a pity. I guess he's horribly disfigured, or just naturally ugly. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Wait, what if he is bald, or missing teeth? Did you say he never takes his armor off? He must really reek then. Gods, what a slob. Master Sunless here is definitely way better. He smells very nice. Simply delicious. Am I right, Master Sunless? Sunny stared at her wordlessly. Why is she dragging me into this? No, wait, what the hell does she mean, bald? I'm not bald. But having feigned ignorance, he couldn't really defend his honor, the third avatar's honor. No matter how much he wanted to. Hiding his frustration, Sunny said weakly, I guess, I never really paid attention to how I smell. To his surprise, though, Nephi's suddenly came to the Shadow Saint's defense. No, you're wrong. The Lord of Shadows, he is not disfigured or ugly. He is, well, he seems like a very outstanding young man in all regards. Sunny nodded subconsciously. You tell her, Neph. But then he frowned. No, but why are you defending that bastard so much? I'm right here. Sunny was confused. The Lord of Shadows was him, but Nephi's didn't know that. So, was she praising some random guy in front of her supposed romantic partner? That was unacceptable. But then their relationship was fake. They had only really met each other a few days ago. So, technically, she knew the Lord of Shadows longer and better. The two of them had even fought side by side against a harrowing, cursed abomination. It was so confusing. What is this situation? How was he supposed to react? While Sunny was questioning his life's choices, Effie scoffed. If he's such an outstanding man, why is he hiding his face behind a mask? What is he, an 8th grader? Nephi's frowned. Maybe it has something to do with his flaw. Maybe he needs to hide his identity for an important reason. In any case, all I know is that a man whose swordsmanship is so beautiful can't be unsightly. Effie glared at her silently, as if wanting to say, Princess, take a hint. What was the hint Nephi's was supposed to take? Sunny did not know. The huntress took a deep breath. Well, anyway, that guy seems to be hiding a lot. Unlike Master Sunless, who is like an open book. An honest and sincere man like Master Sunless doesn't need to hide behind a mask, not to mention that hiding that face behind a mask would be a crime. She seemed to get distracted for a moment, and then laughed. In any case, it seems that we are going to be arriving soon. Shall we change the topic? Nephi's shrugged, seemingly confused by the whole conversation. You're the one who asked. Effie smiled, then looked at Sunny apologetically. Oh, by the way, have you heard the news about the House of Night? It seemed that she really didn't want to talk about the Lord of Shadows anymore. Sunny, who had been excited before, was now unsure how he felt about it. It was nice to hear Nephi's praise him, but also made him angry for some reason. What was going on with him today? He spaced out for a few moments, listening to Nephi's and Effie with one ear. Have they conquered another citadel? Effie nodded. Yes, it's the 7th one in 2 years. Quite remarkable, actually. Their leadership has been making one miracle happen after another recently. I guess the descent of the Dream Gates really lit a fire under them. The House of Night has never been that active, that daring, or that successful before. Nephi sighed. It still won't help them maintain their position. They are at too great a disadvantage without a supreme. Not only in terms of raw power, but also in terms of relevance and population, both mundane and awakened. I'm afraid that the House of Night is doomed to lose its status. That was true, but although the third great clan was now miles behind the other two, without any hope of catching up, it was still vitally important. Both because of the role its ships played in the waking world, and because of how they could break the balance of power in the upcoming war. An alliance with the House of Night could very well be the linchpin of the entire clash between the two domains. Not even due to their saints, but because the Twilight Sea bordered both the Sword domain and the Song domain in the south. Song and Valor were only clamoring to conquer Godgrave, because the House of Night was stubbornly maintaining neutrality. If either of the great clans managed to lure the Nightwalkers to their side, they would be able to launch swift attacks into the enemy territory while bypassing the barrier of the death zones separating their territories. Effie grimaced. At least they are trying, and by the look of it, the House of Night is dead set on staying away from both valor and song. Well, I can understand why. Even if they join the winning side, there will be no future for them but to be absorbed and assimilated after the whole mess is over. Sunny sighed quietly. He wondered how Neve was doing somewhere out there, in the Twilight Sea. The friendly Nightwalker must be having it hard, considering how swiftly the fortunes of his clan had changed. Nephi's, meanwhile, gave Effie a guarded look and then silently gestured to Sunny. You guys finally remembered that I'm not supposed to know anything about the war. Good for you. Effie blinked a couple of times, then shook her head. By the way, Master Sunless, did you know that all the legacy clans are about to go to war? Neff's eyes widened. Effie. Before he could answer, the huntress smiled with a mischievous gleam in her eyes. A war for this beautiful but dense princess right here. Now that she has shown interest in you, every legacy clan will probably scramble to get her hitched to one of their scions before it's too late. The elders of Clan Valor might put pressure on her, too. So that talk about safety I gave you. Effie grinned. Forget everything I said. As a former soldier, you must know the value of a preemptive strike, so aim well and get her pregnant as soon as possible. That will show them. The wine glass cracked in Neff's hand. Sunny did not move, but somewhere far away, the Lord of Shadows gracelessly fell off his throne. The ferry docked at the castle, the silence broken only by the bright sound of Effie laughing uncontrollably. After they disembarked at the castle, Effie bid them farewell and went away, giggling as she walked. Sunny and Nephi's stared at her back until she disappeared from view, both not in a hurry to say anything. What do I even say after that? Sunny sighed and decided not to say anything. Nephi's seemed to be of the same mind. His thoughts, however, were on fire in the wake of Effie's antics. So, while Sunny kept quiet, his imagination was running wild against his better judgment. He did not know what Nephi's was thinking about, but he was definitely thinking about all kinds of things that he probably should not have been thinking about. He threw a furtive glance at Neph. Was she really calm? Was he imagining things, or did her cheeks seem a little pink? No, that is definitely my mind playing tricks on me. There was no way Nephi's would be fazed by mere words. It was just his wishful thinking. It was all Effie's fault. That Effie, she really had not changed at all. He would have thought that being a married woman with a child would curb her wilder tendencies, but alas. Having a loving family only seemed to embolden the vivacious huntress even more, as if having a safe space to retreat to gave her wicked tongue more power. It's a miracle that little Ling is such a sweet boy, despite being raised by that miscreant. Sunny inhaled slowly. Nephi's lingered for a few moments, then looked at him with a deadpan expression. After a while, she said in her usual impassive tone, Don't mind Effie, Saint Athena. She's always like this. Sunny chased the improper thoughts out of his mind, or at least tried to, and chuckled. That's all right. I'm rather accustomed to it. I used to have a close friend who was just like her. In fact, as much as I hate to admit it, I miss it a little. She smiled faintly. I can't quite imagine. The two of them started walking and left the pier. Instead of passing through the crowded gate of the castle, Nephi's led him to a hidden postern, where two knights bowed deeply before letting them in. The pass through the thick outer wall of Bastion was like a long tunnel with walls built of white stone. Walking through it, Sunny wondered what could have brought this mighty wall down and left it laying in ruins, like it lay in the hidden realm that was imprisoned in the reflection of the illusory castle. But then again, that terrible foe had even shattered the moon, so why would Bastion fare any better? The castle was a city in and of itself. It was gargantuan, with somewhere around 1 million people living between its walls, almost half of them awakened. There were hundreds of masters here as well, and at least a dozen saints were always present, either guarding the stronghold or visiting from their own citadels on business. Sunny felt quite peaceful and comfortable living in the sprawling city on the other side of the lake, but here in the castle, he couldn't help but feel a little tense. Soon, they left the tunnel and entered a lively street. "It's quite amazing, isn't it?" His voice sounded a little stifled. Nephi's nodded. Indeed, Bastion is not called a great citadel for no reason. From their point of view at the lowest and outermost ring of the great stronghold, the place they found themselves on looked no different from a city street. Granted, both the wide paved road and the buildings standing opposite the monolithic barrier of the outer wall were made of the same white stone as it. There were residential buildings, merchant stalls, commercial establishments, and people hurrying on their daily errands. However, all of it, except for people and later additions to the original architecture, seemed a little too grand in scale, as if built for creatures that weren't quite giants, but also not quite humans. However, really, this street was a natural part of the defensive fortifications. Bastion was a marvel of military engineering, designed to withstand the most terrible siege. There were all kinds of courtyards, keeps, towers, and auxiliary buildings here, placed in a seemingly chaotic manner, but all of them followed a thoroughly purposeful design. If viewed from above, Bastion resembled an artificial mountain, separated into distinct levels, with concentric circles of inner walls protecting each of them, and the main thoroughfare piercing each of the walls as it scaled the mountains in a spiral. If one wanted to reach the main keep from either of the outer gates, they would have to circle the mountain many times, passing many lesser gates in the process. Even things like the direction of the thoroughfare were full of purpose. If someone managed to breach the outer wall, they would have to follow it clockwise, which meant that their sword hand would be to the next wall, while their shield hand would be away from it, letting the defenders rain arrows on the attackers more effectively. All in all, Sunny did not envy the warriors of Clan Song, who might have to siege this castle one day. Even he felt that the task was much too daunting. Bastion seemed truly impregnable. But of course, it wasn't. The ruins hidden in the moonlit reflection were proof. Nephi's led him deeper into the ancient castle, making sure that they would be seen by everyone who had time to look. The reactions people were giving them were much more intense than those at the lakeshore settlement, mostly because much more of them recognized who Nephi's was. Sunny could practically feel the veneration and admiration they felt for her. Wherever Changing Star went, people's faces suddenly looked bright and inspired, as if just seeing her gave them strength. Well, it made sense. Nephi's had become somewhat of a symbol after the Forgotten Shore, and her fame only grew further in the last 4 years. Especially for the people of the Sword Domain, she was a champion of peace and prosperity. A radiant figure who defended them from the horrors of the nightmare spell, and whose light illuminated all of humanity. Princess Nephi's, one of the 2 invincible sword sisters of Anvil's domain. The nickname Effie had given her in the Dark City was not that outlandish anymore, if at all. So, Sunny could understand the gazes of adoration directed at Neph. However, the more intensely people admired her, the more confusion and simmering hostility his presence by her side caused them. Who was that dainty stranger walking by Changing Star's side? Who does he think he is, being so close to our princess? Suddenly, he felt a little uncomfortable. I might have underestimated the consequences of playing Neph's secret darling. He might have underestimated it severely. As a passerby glared at him with obvious hostility, Sunny made sure that Nephi's could not see, and glared back with a cold menace. You can glower all you want, but are you worthy? All of you wretches combined are not fit to stand by her side. Only I am. Well, that was what his glare was meant to convey, at least. Sunny was not unfamiliar with the castle, since he had to come here every time he wanted to return to the waking world without raising any suspicions. However, he would usually spend quite a lot of time following the main thoroughfare to the main keep, where the gateway was located. This time, Nephi's led him on a shorter path to the pinnacle of the stronghold, across narrow stairs and hidden posterns that he had not even known existed. There was no need to waste time at each checkpoint, either, so their progress was rather fast. Who would dare to stop the transcendent daughter of a sovereign? After a while, Sunny asked with a hint of curiosity, "By the way, Lady Nephi's, where exactly are we going?" He knew that they were about to sign a contract, but wasn't sure where the signing would take place. Was he going to make a deal with Clan Valor or with the Fire Keepers directly? Who else would be involved? She looked at him with a hint of confusion, then suddenly seemed a little embarrassed. "Oh, please forgive me. I have forgotten to explain properly." With that, Nephi's raised her hand and pointed to one of the tallest towers in Bastion. The tower was not much different to all the others, with one big exception. There was a graceful flying ship floating in the air near it, moored to the higher floor of the tower with thick cables. A beautiful tree was growing around its main mast. The chain breaker. Sunny unconsciously looked up at the beautiful visage of the Ivory Island drifting in the air high above the lake. "I see." Nephi's lingered for a moment. "Very few people have ever visited my citadel, but you don't have to worry. Everyone there is a trusted friend and ally. It is also quite peaceful there. We won't be disturbed." Right. Sunny was not supposed to have ever been in the Ivory Tower, so he had to act as if the whole experience was new to him. He put a sufficiently believable expression of wonder on his face, making sure to keep a proper level of decorum, of course. "I've long heard about the beauty of the Ivory Tower. It is my luck to be able to visit it." A faint smile appeared on Neff's face. "I'm sure you'll like it." They continued on their way, soon reaching a lesser courtyard in front of the tower. There were quite a few people here, although most of them were different from the crowd at the lower levels of the castle. The closer to the pinnacle of the stronghold one was, the fewer mundane people there were around. At this point, Sunny could not see anyone but awakened, with plenty of masters mixed among them. However, the gazes directed at him were not in any way friendlier. Well, it was natural. He was an outsider after all, and people were wary of outsiders. Just before they entered the tower, a tall man wearing the colors of Clan Valor, a knight, from the looks of it, approached them and bowed deeply. "Saint Nephi's, if I can have a minute of your time." She frowned slightly. "What is it?" The knight hesitated for a moment, then said in a dignified tone, "There is a slight problem with the supplies you requested. They were delivered on time, but the specifications, I'm afraid you will need to inspect them personally. If everything is in order, I'll give a command to immediately load them on the chain breaker." The matter concerned the inner working of Clan Valor, so he was being vague around Sunny. Nephi's remained silent for a bit, then glanced his way. Eventually, she said, "Please wait for me a little, Master Sunless. I have to deal with this issue, my apologies. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He smiled. It's no problem. He had no doubt that someone would inevitably try to bother him as soon as she left, but it was really of no concern to him. Unless Anvil himself decided to come and stir trouble, Sunny was confident in his ability to send any potential troublemaker on their way without any commotion. Nephi's hesitated for a few moments, then nodded curtly and walked away with the tall knight. Sunny was left alone, thinking that it was a good opportunity to compose himself. Smiling faintly, he walked over to the lakefront ramparts of the lesser courtyard and gazed into the distance. He could see the young city stretching along the shore in the distance, bathed in sunlight and brimming with vitality. The lake was calm and radiant. It was a beautiful sight. As Sunny enjoyed the view and the warm breeze, he sighed. He could sense two shadows approaching him from behind. That was fast. Turning around, he saw two men younger than him by a few years walking toward him. One was walking with purposeful strides, while the other was trying to hold him back with a troubled expression. Both were masters and wore enchanted armor, but neither donned the colors of Clan Valor. So, they must have been noble scions from vassal legacy clans. Legacies. Soon, the two scions reached him. The one who had been purposeful gave Sunny a glare and said, his voice full of arrogant indignation. I am Ascended Tristan of the Aegis Rose clan. This is Ascended Mercy of the Dagonet clan. Who might you be? Sunny blinked a couple of times, looking at them in amusement. Wait, it can't be. Is this the legendary arrogant young master encounter? It is, isn't it? Gods, the legends are true. He reminded himself to remain calm. Keep your cool, be polite, don't start trouble. Sunny smiled politely. I am called Ascended Sunless. How may I help you, gentlemen? Master Tristan frowned. Ascended Sunless, of which clan? Sunny remained silent for a moment. Why was everyone so insistent on waving their family name around? Of no clan. The young man scoffed, while his friend tried to pull him away. Tristan, drop it. Come on, we are going to be late for practice. Master Mercy of the Dagonet clan seemed to have a little bit of brain, at least, but the scion of Aegis Rose clan did not want to listen. Scowling fiercely, he moved a step closer to Sunny and asked, his voice harsh and domineering. Master Sunless of no clan seems to have some business with Lady Changing Star, but that doesn't give you the right to. Don't think I didn't notice you ogling her with lewd eyes, scoundrel. What eyes, huh? The second legacy gave Sunny an apologetic glance and tried to pull his friend away harder. He seemed exasperated, hinting that Master Tristan had a habit of saying rash things. Sunny took a deep breath. Be polite, don't start trouble, be polite. He calmed himself down, then opened his mouth and said, Why does a moron like you have the confidence to open his mouth and spout nonsense? If you were born brainless, at least have the decency to keep quiet. Better yet, get lost altogether. Don't think I didn't notice you being dropped on your head as a child, you cretin. Sunny's words hung in the air, contrasted starkly against his polite smile. The two young masters seemed frozen, as if unable to digest what they had just heard. Mercy of Clan Dagonet let out a stifled breath. At the same time, Ascended Tristan's eyes widened. His face, frozen in a state of stunned disbelief, was slowly contorted by a grimace of righteous wrath. Trembling in outrage, he bellowed, You dare! Sunny couldn't quite believe it. He held his breath, his heart beating wildly. Is he going to say it? He's going to say it. He totally is. His smile remained perfectly pleasant. I do dare. Why, wasn't that obvious from my remark? Or has your flaw made you deaf? Goodness gracious, dumb and deaf. What an unfortunate fate. You have my sympathy. The young master stared at him, mouth agape. After a few moments of silence, Tristan pointed a trembling finger at Sunny and hissed. You are courting death, mongrel. He said it. He had really said it. Sunny had no words. It was really too astonishing. He struggled to suppress a burst of laughter. Amazing. But also, what is it with legacy brats and calling people mongrels? Sunny kept his composure with titanic effort and shrugged. Funny you should say, but I am indeed somewhat of a mongrel. His smile widened, which seemed to send the young master into a spiral. With his face turning a concerning shade of red, Ascended Tristan outstretched a hand and growled. You've gone too far, scoundrel. You need to be taught a lesson. I, Tristan of Aegis Rose, hereby challenge you to a duel. Sunny blinked. Huh. No, he was just speaking metaphorically when he suggested that the fool had been dropped on his head. But now, it seemed like maybe there was some truth to the statement. By now, their spat had attracted a lot of attention. The people in the courtyard were all gazing at them with strange expressions. Master Mercy had abandoned his attempts to drag the second legacy away and was now looking around helplessly. A duel, huh? Sunny erased the smile from his face and said in a solemn tone, I refuse. Tristan grinned. Great, then summon your What, you refuse? Sunny nodded. Yes, I refuse. What, are you really deaf? The young master seemed flustered. He stared at him in confusion for a few moments, then asked in a trembling voice, How can you refuse? That's cowardly. Don't you have any honor? Amused, Sunny simply shook his head. That's right, I am a coward, and I don't have any honor. In fact, I wouldn't be caught dead having honor. Such a distasteful thing. After being accosted by an arrogant young master and asked if he was courting death, all Sonny had to do to experience the entire triumvirate of clichés was to slap offended Tristan across the face. However, he had no intention of doing that. Who knew, perhaps the poor fool was really suffering from a character flaw. His behavior was too outrageously hot-blooded to be explained by simple foolhardiness. Plus, it wouldn't be a good look for Sonny to go around beating children, not to mention that his meticulously cultivated harmless persona was not supposed to be able to win a duel with a legacy ascended. No matter how much he wanted to teach the loud brat a memorable lesson. Ascended Tristan huffed and puffed, staring at him with angry eyes. Then, a mocking smile suddenly twisted his lips. Don't be too afraid, coward, I won't kill you. We'll just duel to first blood. I refuse your refusal. Summon your weapon and face me. Sonny stared at him incredulously for a bit. To hell with it. He sighed. To first blood, fine, I accept. His smile turned a little sheepish. But, I don't have a memory weapon, so I can't summon any. Hearing these words, young Master Tristan paled. You don't even have a single memory weapon, and you call yourself an ascended. Sonny scratched the back of his head, his face full of embarrassment. I do call myself an ascended, but not all ascended are like you, scions of storied legacy clans. Personally, I manage a small cafe and a shop. The last time I was in a battle, I had to run away and barely escaped with my life. It had been a battle against a cursed tyrant, but they didn't have to know that. Master Mercy seemed relieved. He let out a long sigh and said tentatively, Then let us just drop this matter. Tristan, he is clearly not a... But his friend shook his head furiously, summoning a memory. No, I simply can't let this matter rest. I demand satisfaction. Soon, a heavy greatsword manifested itself from sparks of light. He scoffed contemptuously and shoved the sword into Sonny's hands. Here, this sword is called the Heartbreaker, and it is a family heirloom of my clan. I'll lend it to you for today. It is your privilege to be able to hold it, knave. With that, he shook his head and mumbled under his breath. This, really? I just don't understand why Lady Nephi's would associate with such a profligate wastrel. He must have deceived her with his looks, the scoundrel. Sonny held the greatsword awkwardly and rested its tip on the ground. No, really, what was this situation? Why was the person who had challenged him to a duel supplying him with a powerful weapon to fight that duel? Was Master Tristan actually brainless? At the same time, the young man in question summoned another memory, this one a much lighter arming sword. From the looks of it, he was giving his opponent an advantage, a better weapon with a longer reach. He also dismissed the outer layers of his armor, leaving only a gambeson jacket behind. Here, I won't use any enchantments, so you won't be at a disadvantage. Are you ready? Sonny remained silent for a moment, then shrugged timidly. I guess I am. Young Master Tristan grinned. Then, here I come. Prepare to be humbled, wimp. He brandished his sword and lunged forward. Under the dubious gazes of everyone gathered in the courtyard, the duel started. It seemed like the diminutive Master Sunless, an unknown ascended from the lakeshore settlement, had no chance against the young master of the Aegis Rose clan. Not only was Tristan much taller and more powerfully built, but he was also a legacy. And legacies still held the title of the most skilled and deadly warriors of humanity, by far, even now that the number of awakened had swelled. Their upbringing, training, and martial culture were all designed to produce lethal fighters to rule the battlefield unopposed. The idle onlookers did not know what the pretty young man had done to enrage the legacy scion so much, but from the looks of it, he was in for a good beating, which was a shame, considering that with his jade skin and slender figure, he looked quite handsome. Sadly, though, he didn't look like much of a fighter. Neither did Master Sunless seem very familiar with handling a blade. He tried to swing the provided greatsword to deflect an incoming attack, but failed. Not just that. Perhaps due to his short stature and slender build, he actually lost control of the heavy blade and allowed its weight to pull him off balance. Instead of deflecting the opponent's sword, he yelped and stumbled forward instead. That was a common mistake, most often seen among awakened. Young awakened were prone to overestimating their newfound strength, forgetting that their mass and center of gravity remained the same. So, it was easy for them to misjudge things and end up being pulled forward by the inertia of their own swing. Still, for a master to be that inexperienced in combat was a bit. The delicate ascended seemed to be doomed. But strangely enough, he ended up being saved by his clumsy mistake. It was doubtful that he could have deflected Tristan's powerful strike, but after stumbling forward and nearly sprawling on the ground, the opponent's sword missed and flew harmlessly above his head. There was a murmur among the onlookers. Lucky. But then, they were treated to a bizarre spectacle. That Master Sunless was not just lucky, it was as if he was charmed. No matter what Tristan of Aegis Rose tried to do, his sword never seemed able to reach the cowardly opponent. Master Sunless slipped on the cobblestones, accidentally evading a skillful attack. While trying to stand up, he tripped on the hem of his own silk robe, losing balance and gracelessly sprawling on the ground, but also making Tristan's follow-up strike miss him entirely. While trying to block a downward slash, he actually failed to hold onto his sword and dropped it, staggering back in panic. However, in the process, the coward accidentally kicked the falling sword and sent it flying in the direction of the legacy scion, who was forced to hastily defend his lower torso and retreat. Then, Master Sunless recklessly bent down to pick up the fallen sword, a grievous mistake when facing an armed opponent. However, it was exactly because no one in their right mind would think of leaving themselves so open to a lethal blow that Tristan had never anticipated it. Once again, fruitlessly sliced the empty air above the oblivious opponent's head. "What are you doing? Fight like a man." A sheepish smile appeared on the unknown master's deathly pale face. "But I was trying to pick up my sword. How am I supposed to fight without a sword?" Ascended Tristan let out an infuriated growl. "Just take it, damn, I'll step back." Under everyone's bewildered gazes, he took a step back and waited patiently for his opponent to arm himself. But Master Sunless did not seem to be in a hurry, breathing heavily. Tristan's face twitched. "What are you doing?" The delicate young man coughed. "Well, you didn't specify that I should pick it up immediately, did you? So I thought I'd catch my breath real quick." The legacy scion seemed stuck between complete disbelief and apoplectic fury. "Pick it up right this second." Master Sunless bent down and gripped the sword. All right, there's no need to shout." Soon, the oddly comical duel continued. He continued stumbling blindly through the hurricane of steel, remaining unscathed by sheer, ridiculous luck. But even that helpless fool's luck was bound to run out sooner or later. And finally, in less than a minute, Tristan's sword pierced the silk robe and bit into the delicate young man's shoulder. He had held back, not wishing to deliver a serious wound to the offending profligate, so the cut was shallow. Still, a cut was a cut. It also hurt like a real cut. Sonny grimaced. Young Master Tristan, meanwhile, gave him a disdainful smirk and retrieved his sword. The two of them were standing close to each other, and the legacy was staring down at Sonny, his face full of pleased indignation. "Serves you right, scoundrel. The victory is mine. Now apologize, recount your misdeeds, and humbly beg forgiveness. I'll let you off easy if you do. But if you don't blame me for being ruthless." But Sonny simply tilted his head. "Who says that the victory is yours?" Tristan blinked. "What? I clearly just won. What are you?" But Sonny was nonplussed. He raised the collar of the nebulous mantle, revealing the black shirt beneath. "We agreed to fight to first blood. Do you see any blood?" The young master stared at his chest in confusion. There was clearly a cut in the little knave's shirt, but where was the blood? Even the blade of his sword was clean. He frowned and started to speak, his tone full of confusion. How? But before he could finish, and to the absolute shock of everyone watching, the next moment, Sonny's fist slammed into his face with an audible bang, sending young Tristan of Aegis Rose staggering back. The legacy scion collided with his friend, Master Mercy, while covering his face with a hand. His stunned eyes were opened wide. There was blood dripping between his fingers beneath them. Suddenly, the courtyard was silent. In that silence, Ascended Tristan slowly lowered his hand, revealing 2 red streams flowing out of his nostrils and marring his handsome face. His voice was listless. You. Sonny dropped the heavy greatsword on the ground with visible relief, rubbed his wrists, and let out a sigh. Then he smiled. Well, it seems like I have won. Good fight, good fight. Now shall we proceed with begging for forgiveness? You don't need to kneel, I'm not a pervert, so I'm not into such stuff. At that moment, young Master Tristan looked like he would spit blood. That, too, would have constituted Sonny's victory, if the legacy wasn't already bleeding. Then, Tristan's features contorted, and he seemed to completely lose his mind. With a face flush with murderous wrath, the legacy lunged forward and roared. You wretched mongrel. Sonny pretended to be frightened and flinched away with an ungentlemanly shriek. Coincidentally, or rather, quite purposefully, the sun was directly behind him, which meant that his shadow was sprawled on the cobblestones directly in front of him, right where Ascended Tristan's foot had just landed. Using a tiny bit of essence, Sonny stealthily manifested a small part of the wild shadow and made it trip the poor fool without anyone noticing. That was more than enough to send the enraged young master, who had committed to the attack a little bit too hard, completely off balance. It all worked splendidly. In fact, it worked a little bit too well. Oh, crap. Sonny had forgotten to take one small, but vitally important detail into account. In the next moment, everyone in the courtyard witnessed a startling scene. Ascended Tristan of the Aegis Rose clan lunged at the dainty master, who let out an embarrassing shriek and flinched away in fear. By doing so, he not only completely avoided the sudden attack, but also caused the legacy to lose balance and be pulled forward by the weight of his sword. And there, right behind his cowardly opponent, was the parapet of the courtyard ramparts. The young legacy had no time to slow down and collided with it at full speed, buckling at the waist and flying over the stone parapet in the blink of an eye. A split second later, his figure disappeared from view. A dumbfounded silence settled over the courtyard. In a few moments, everyone shuddered as they heard a loud crash from somewhere far below. Master Sunless looked back with a strange expression on his face, then cleared his throat and gracefully straightened his mantle with an elegant motion. Then he turned to Mercy of Clan Dagonet and said, his voice full of sincere concern, Sir Mercy, why are you dawdling? Shouldn't you hurry up and tend to your friend? Such a fall won't kill him, I think, but he'll certainly need a good healer. The petrified young man slowly nodded. Why yes, I'll go. With that, he turned around and hurried away. But at that moment, Master Sunless called out to him. Wait a moment. Ascended Mercy froze and slowly turned around. Oh yes. Sonny smiled and pointed to the heavy greatsword laying on the ground. The sword, what was it, the hard breaker? Take the sword with you. The young master stared at the greatsword for a moment, then bent down to pick it up. Yes. He mumbled an apology and dashed away. Sonny grinned. Make sure that Ascended Tristan takes his time to rest and recuperate. There's no need to rush. He sighed and then added, his voice full of magnanimity. He can beg me for forgiveness at a later date.